Let's go back 3 years to fall semester, where I was in my freshman year of college. The beginning of the year, freshman buzz was alive, everyone meeting and making friends fast. As I formed a tight circle of friends on my floor, the top floor, we would hang out in the floor lounge together. We began to notice someone peculiar. A lone, stocky-built dude around college age, hanging around our lounge, the elevators right outside the lounge, the stairwell, and the bathroom areas. He would always have his cell phone out, seemingly reading and sending texts, never talking to anyone, and rarely taking his nose out of his phone. We were a little sketched out by his behavior, but didn't think too much of it, assuming he might be visiting someone we didn't know on the floor. After seeing him for the first time myself while I was sitting in the lounge, I tried to approach him. I was the floor president and figured I should at least say hi, but mostly wanted to figure out an explanation for the weird behavior. However, as soon as I walked into the hallway, the guy had disappeared without a trace. A few more weeks passed, and the first incident occurred. A member of my buddy group was taking a shower in the communal dorm bathroom, only to discover his towel and clothes were missing after shower. To his surprise, he found the creepy guy in the bathroom, holding his clothes and towel from a distance. Their exchange was brief and awkward. Are these yours?" the creepy guy inquired in a casual manner, prompting my friend to respond with a confused, yeah. He grabbed his belongings and left the bathroom without further conversation. At the time, my friend was too puzzled to fully register the situation, which happened later when the question dawned on him. The hell was he doing with my towel? Another week passed, and we had our first floor meeting where the incident was brought up. Now, everyone on the floor was aware of this man. My interest in the creeper shifted from curiosity to wariness. Time moved on, and things were quiet for a few weeks, until one morning, I woke up to a panicked knock on my door, which was next to the bathroom. I found another floormate, soaking wet, pale white, and shaking. He proceeded to tell me that, while he was showering, he turned around only to discover the creeper peering over the top of the shower curtain, intently staring at him before fleeing. I immediately called DPS, that's our campus security, and while waiting for them, I organized a search to look for this creepy guy. We searched everywhere, stairwells, bathrooms, all floors, but couldn't find him before campus security got there. I was in the lobby with victims 1 and 2, talking with DPS, filling them in on the situation. Suddenly, a guy from a lower floor said, "That creeper did the same thing to me." Within a few minutes, more guys from different floors joined, all with a similar story. It was at this point we realized the issue wasn't just on our floor. Fear spread through the dorm. All residents, boys and girls, were legitimately scared to shower, walk the halls at night, or even stay in their rooms with the doors unlocked. As for me, I was determined to protect my floor, which had become like family to me. I organized a reconnaissance network among the dorm residents and began piecing together the creeper's methods. Our dorm has many exits, but only one entrance, which required a resident's keycard to get in. After 6 p.m., students must show an ID with a resident sticker and register guests. I found out that the creeper bypassed this by using 2 methods. Method 1, he befriended some freshmen early in the semester who would let him in. thinking he had other friends there. Method 2, he'd follow someone closely, pretending he lost his card to get inside. Once inside, he would lurk in the stairwells, avoiding detection, and seemingly knew the prime shower times. Enraged and wanting to end this, I coordinated sweeps of the stairwells during peak shower hours and waited. One morning, a girl from my surveillance group texted me, saying she saw someone matching the creeper description lurking outside the door and slinking in behind a student, Method 2. I hurriedly put on my gym shorts and rushed to the shower. While I was finishing my shower, I saw a big shadow move fast away from the shower curtain. I had checked before, and you had to be really close to making a shadow on the curtain. I was super mad. I got out, put on my shorts, and ran to the door. I swung the door so hard that it left damage on the wall. I left the bathroom and kicked open the stairwell door, but there was nobody there. I was sure the person couldn't have gone far, so I looked around the elevator area. I saw 2 girls there. One of them pointed to the lounge. I knew I had him. I used to play sports and am a big guy, so I walked toward him, ready for a confrontation. He was there, pretending to use his phone. I blocked his way and started asking questions. Who are you? Why were you in the bathroom? Do you study here? Who do you know here? He didn't try to run or fight. Just said he was joining the university next term and knew someone from another floor. I'm good at staying calm in tense situations. I knew he was lying, but I didn't want to get in trouble, especially since I hadn't actually seen his face. So, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly, introducing myself as the floor president. I told him nicely that he matched the description of the peeping Tom that the residents had been complaining about. I suggested we clear things up with campus security, DPS, and asked him to come with me. As we walked, I knocked on the doors, trying to find someone who knew him or could identify him as the creeper. I knocked on the door of victim number 1, who recognized him immediately, confirmed his ID, and went to call DPS while I escorted the creeper to the elevator area. On our way, I insisted he call his friend to come up and explain things. While waiting for his buddy, 2 of my friends from lower floors burst out the stairwell door to back me up. I'll tell you. One was a jacked black kid from New York. The other was an Israeli international student and a veteran of the Israeli armed forces. They confronted the guy in the face, demanding answers to his creepy behavior. I must mention that the Israeli was actually close to kicking his ass at that point. But I told them to wait, because I wanted everything handled properly and justly. Just around that time, his buddy showed up looking all confused as they exchanged conversation. Then this guy goes ahead and plays the race card, claiming we are accusing him just because of his race. Seriously? After victim, 1 had just identified you for creeping on him during shower. News that we caught the creeper spread quick through the dorm and beyond, like wildfire. Anyways, we finally got into the elevator. The ride down was nerve-wracking because I wasn't sure if he had a weapon, but we had to keep him with us. Plus, DPS officers were already in the main lobby waiting for us, so he couldn't run away. The DPS took him for questioning. I didn't go to class that day, choosing instead to help with the reports. Despite his story being full of holes, I later found out that he wasn't charged with anything. Later, I discovered his father held a high position in New York's government and had managed to get him out of trouble. I I even spotted his dad's name on the New York ballot during the last presidential election, and almost choked when I saw it. I won't share names, but the whole situation was utterly disgusting. A real-life scenario where power protected a sexual predator. So, I've never been really scared before, but something super weird happened during college, and I've got to share it. When I started college, I moved into a dorm on campus. It was all exciting and new. I met my 2 roommates. One, who I'll call John, seemed okay but a bit clingy and always asking for stuff. Later, I met the other guy, David, was a neat but quiet dude. We liked the same things, but he was kind of odd sometimes. The first few nights were pretty normal, just settling into a small dorm room. Our building was brand new, and everything in it was fresh and unused. I was even the first one to use our bathroom, which was kind of cool, I guess. But then, the third night, things got weird. I was lying in bed after watching some TV. I double-checked the door to make sure it was locked, because I'd brought some expensive things with me. And I didn't know my roommates well enough to trust them completely. That night, though, I started feeling super hot, sweating a ton, which never happens to me. Then, I woke up, and it was totally dark. This was weird because of 2 things. First, there's this light in our dorm hallway that's always on, and I could usually see it from under my door. Also, I hadn't put up the curtains yet, and there's this bright light right outside my window. My room should have been kind of orange because of it. But nope, it was pitch black. I got scared and jumped up to hit the light switch. I heard this loud noise, kind of like the sound you hear when you stick your head out of a car going super fast. When I opened my door, light came rushing in from both the hallway and my window. It was so quiet, just dead silent. I tried to listen for any sound, anything at all, but there was nothing. I tiptoed to my roommates' doors to check on them. They seemed to be sleeping, breathing just like normal. I told myself it was just because everything was new, and I was freaking out for no reason. I went back to bed, and the rest of the night was quiet. Fast forward 2 days. Now it's Wednesday. I got back to my dorm around 10 p.m. after a super long day of classes and work. I was feeling tired, so I cracked open a Red Bull and sipped it while playing some PC games with my noise-canceling headphones on. About an hour in, I started hearing this mumbling sound. I figured it was John chatting with his mom before bed, like he usually does. He lives far away, like 10 hours, so he probably just needed to talk to someone from home. But then, something didn't feel right. My headphone volume was way up, like at 80%. How was I hearing him through the wall and over my game sounds? Then I realized John wasn't just mumbling. He was screaming. And not just any scream, but one that made my blood run cold. I couldn't figure out if the sound was coming from outside, or if I was just imagining it. Besides, it was way too late to be yelling that loudly on the phone. I ran to his door and started banging, trying to get him to open. It took like 3 minutes, but he finally did. There was John, looking all sleepy and confused, like I'd woken him up. "What's the deal?" he grumbled, barely awake. "Why were you screaming like that?" I replied. He was clueless. "What are you talking about? Weren't you supposed to come back at 10? He asked, rubbing his eyes. I was so mad. He screamed so loud and then acted like he'd been asleep. And then he tried to turn it around on me, saying I was late when I wasn't. Frustrated, I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was 4 a.m. I couldn't believe it. No way had I played games for 6 hours straight. Sometimes I lose track of time, yeah, but never for that long. That's just crazy. I checked how long I'd been playing on Steam. Just over 1 hour. Now, I was really freaking out. I remembered leaving work a bit early, like at 9:30, and heading straight to the dorm. How did I lose nearly 5 hours? None of it made any sense. I couldn't sleep after that. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, until it was time for classes. The next day, I asked David if he heard any weird noise last night. He said no, and he's the kind of guy who wakes up if a pin drops. I didn't know what to think, so I just shrugged and said it must have been a noisy cat outside or something. But then, the next night, things got even creepier. I was totally beat because I didn't sleep at all the night before. I forgot all about the screaming and fell asleep fast. But then I woke up again to that same terrifying scream. This time, it was right outside my door. I could see that my door was still locked, but I was too scared to move, just sitting there, hoping it wouldn't somehow come in. Then, the screaming stopped. I stayed in bed, too scared to move for what felt like forever. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because the next thing I knew, my alarm was going off. And something was really off. My door was a few inches open, but I didn't recall leaving it that way, since I always make sure to close it before going to bed. I leaped out of bed and backed up against the wall, heart racing. Then, I felt this sharp pain in my foot. I'd stepped on this small black trinket. It had these antennae sticking out from it, and strange symbols all over it, like a twisted river or something. I was so done with all this. I panicked and threw it out the hallway, then went straight to my RA. That's like a student who helps out in the dorms. I told him everything. He gave me this look, then said we should go check things out. We went back to my dorm, and he went straight to David's room. I was confused because I was sure I told him it was John screaming at night. David came to the door, and my RA started asking if we'd had issues. He kept talking about me and David having problems. Finally, I told him, "No, you don't get it. It's John I'm having trouble with." They both just stared at me with a suspicious look. Then, my RA said something I'll never forget. "You and David are the only ones in this suite. There was supposed to be a third guy, but he never checked in. There's never been a John here." David nodded, looking just as confused. "Yeah, it's always been just us two." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I rushed to John's room and flung the door open. I had to see it for myself. It was completely empty. All the usual furniture was there, but it was like no one had ever lived there. No bedsheets, no laptop, no TV, no clothes. Nothing. It was like John had never existed at all. I've spent many years trying to forget this encounter, but it still gives me goosebumps every time I talk about it. Whoever that John guy was, I still don't know. And I wasn't dreaming. It was real. When I first started at university, I shared a room with two guys. One was a big white guy from a suburb. He played the bass guitar, didn't like the government, and smoked weed all the time. The other roommate was a smaller Indian guy who also smoked a lot. The two of them became friends really fast and started selling things together, dealers. As time went on, the white guy, let's call him Steve, started getting really aggressive with me, all paranoid and accusing me of stealing his stash. and will call me names such as white conformist retard, so on. As time went on, he started passing subtle threats and even few death threats and so on, which I didn't take seriously and would just ignore, but that would turn out to be a huge mistake. So, 2 weeks before spring break, a female friend came to visit me at university. I showed her around South Carolina and the college, and she stayed in my room. Steve happens to be awake and started being really rude, cussing. At some point, he subtly called my friend a really mean name. I almost lost it, but my friend calmed me down and mouthed, "Ignore him." Our university had a zero-tolerance policy towards fighting, and it wasn't worth getting kicked out because of his immaturity. So, I decided to get back at him another way. I wouldn't let him smoke in our room anymore. My friend left the next day, which was a Sunday, and Steve began smoking as usual. So I confronted him that smoking was not allowed in the room, which he is aware. He tells me to shut up, which I insisted if he kept smoking, I'd tell our RA, the person in charge of our dorm. He didn't stop, so I walked straight out to the RA and informed him of how my roommate is losing it, aggressiveness, weed, and so on. The RA promised to talk to him soon. Fast forward the next day, Steve and I are in the room. He's saying things like, "It would be so easy to get me thrown into prison. I'm a terrible person," and whatnot. I'm shrugging him off, which upsets him even more. So he picks up a phone and calls 911, saying he wishes to report a statutory rape on me for when my friend was staying the night. She was 17 at the time. I must emphasize that she was only a friend and nothing intimate happened between us. Regardless, I checked all my bases and was absolutely fine. Just felt it was a pain that I now needed to deal with the police because of the psycho. A few hours later that day, I'm still in the room when he arrives back and begins to smoke again. I tell him he can't. He tells me off and goes to fill his bong with water. So while out, I pull out my camera, cover it with a rag, and turn it on to catch audio for evidence. Steve came back, and over 15 minutes, he got more and more aggressive. He admitted he smokes and sells weed from our room all the time. He said he called the police on me, just I was getting on his ass for smoking. Then he made a few more subtle threats. After hearing all this, I decided I'd had enough and headed to class. On my way, I ran into my RA again and told him everything that had happened recently. The RA went to our room, and it turns out he caught Steve smoking weed in the room. He began to write him up. At that same time, the police Steve had called on me showed up. They evaluated the situation and decided to take Steve with them to ask more questions. It turned out Steve had bipolar disorder and had been off his medication. So, after dealing with him calling the police with lies, they got him medicated back to his ward. The university also took the necessary precautions as well. My other roommate stayed in touch with him for a while, filling me in on whatever became of Steve. But eventually, we all lost contact with him. The rest of the year was much better, and I've had great roommates ever since. But I must say that guy was a real mess, and I hope he got the help he needed. I remember it like it was yesterday. I went to a small college for women in the South because I got a scholarship. It seemed like a good idea at first, but later I will come to realize it was a bad idea. During orientation, I met a girl who seemed friendly. We decided to become roommates, which felt better than pairing up with a stranger. We even planned together about what each of us would bring to our shared room. Our dorm room had 2 beds and a bathroom, and we shared a suite with a similar room next door. On move-in day, I learned that my roommate lived just 15 minutes away from the school, while I had to travel from a different state. She was an only child who had been homeschooled, and she seemed a bit odd, but I thought she would adjust over time. The very first night, she stayed up talking nonstop. She shared a lot about her family, especially things about her mom that were very personal stuff you wouldn't usually share with someone you've just met. I found out her mom had a history of mental health issues and had been in and out of psychiatric hospitals, and she was the one who had homeschooled my roommate. Living together wasn't easy. My roommate wasn't used to sharing space and would often disturb my peace. She had a habit of making noise by slamming drawers and doors, especially when I was trying to rest because I didn't have classes. She had an unusual routine, sleeping in the afternoons from 2 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. Then, she'd stay awake until very late at night, trying to chat about her family stories, which was often the time I needed to focus on my homework, so I just ignored her attempts. Things took a turn for the worse in our second semester. I got very sick, so sick that the health center informed my professors I wouldn't be able to attend classes for a week. I spent that time sleeping heavily. But as I mentioned, she was always slamming doors and drawers without any regard for me sleeping. When I got better, my sleep schedule was all messed up. One morning, I woke up to find her staring at me from the end of my bed, which scared the crap out of me. But I tried to put it away. I panicked when I saw the time and realized that I'd missed my class. This was a big problem because the professor was strict about attendance. While I was freaking out, she just said she didn't wake me up because I had told her not to. Then she walked away. Honestly, I don't remember telling her that, and I just didn't have the energy to keep talking about it. So, I rushed to my next class, still upset. It was a mandatory course for arts majors, filled with my roommate's peers, although she wasn't taking it that term. I was there as an elective. Everyone noticed I was angry, and they kept asking why. Frustrated, I blurted out that my roommate was dead to me. I shouldn't have said it, but I did, and then I just waited for the class to start. After that, I didn't want to talk to my roommate. I ignored her attempts at conversation and focused on my studies. This went on for 2 days, until she returned from her studio class looking upset. She asked if I was mad, because others had noticed our tension. We talked it over and agreed to tolerate each other until the school year ended, and then we'd go our separate ways. So, I thought we had put everything behind us. Luckily, midterms were coming up, followed by spring break. I thought a break at home would do me good. After my last exam, I planned to grab some food and head home, but I found a voicemail from the school telling me to go to the residential life office. I was confused because my mom was handling the housing payments for the following year, so I thought it might be related to that. When I got to the office, I didn't have to wait, which was unusual. The director, who usually made students wait, saw me right away. He asked if I knew why I was there. I had some guesses, but they didn't make sense. He inquired about any recent fights between my roommate and me. I confirmed we'd had a disagreement, but insisted we'd resolved it. After a long conversation, he finally revealed that my roommate's mother had called the campus police, claiming I had threatened her daughter's life. I spent about 10 straight minutes telling the director the story of our argument, but he warned me that I might be kicked out of the dorms. That rule seemed so unfair because sophomores and freshmen had to stay on campus unless they were with a legal guardian, even though we were all adults. The whole situation led me to think that my roommate might be mentally unstable. I was shocked that she tried to get me kicked out of the dorm. Now that I think about it, there's no way I could handle commuting from my home that's 4 hours away. I was angry and off schedule, trying to get lunch, when someone told me the campus police had taken my roommate out of class and asked if I could take her backpack. At that moment, I was completely over the whole drama. I wasn't even interested in why the police had come for her. So I told them straight up, no, I'm not touching her stuff, and suggested that they check with the residential life office. I was on my way home, driving, when suddenly my phone rang. It was my roommate. She sounded really upset, almost like I had done something terrible to her pet. She rushed to explain that she didn't say I was trying to kill her, and that she would fix it, that she didn't mean for this to happen. In the end, the school moved her out of our room. I was so horrified by the whole experience and other problems with the residential life staff that I decided not to enroll for the next year. All right, we've reached the end of today's episode. A warm welcome to all the new subscribers. If you enjoyed these stories, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more horror stories like this one. Until next time, see you in the next video. Bye for now.